So we'll get into the movie that you have that's available on Fear Picks. But before we do that, I just want to get to know you a bit. So please tell us your background in filmmaking.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start from the beginning and kind of move into how I got into it. But I started doing like voice acting in like 2016 because I had a weird like dip in employment and I was kind of feeling like I hadn't been doing art stuff like I used to when I was a kid. I used to do a lot of weird like projects with my friends, making like little movies and Um, I'm a musician, so I was doing that a lot too. And I just kind of fell out of that. And then in like 2016, like my mid 20s, I started doing voice acting, going through like a website called Casting Call Club. And then that was really hard to kind of like get into professionally. But so that led me to like write my own stuff, like my own like audio dramas to like voice act with my friends and stuff. And I started to kind of fall out of love with just doing that. And I'm like, well, what's the difference between this and like a movie or something, right? Um, and I'm kind of careful before I get into stuff. So I actually just picked up a camera and started doing photography first,
Okay.
and then kind of like slow rolled my way into doing film around 2018, 2019, which was a very interesting time to get into it because then, as we all know, 2020 hits and then we're in COVID. So,
Right.
um, But then as COVID kind of like rolls off, like late 2020, 2021, I start getting to do like I guess like I cut my teeth on like um fan films. Like the first film I ever like took part in, I was the director of photography for a short film for like a Kingpin fan film.
Okay.
Um yeah, so that was kind of fun. And then, I think like a lot of people's first films, it wasn't anything to write home about, but it was fun. I fell in love with the process and just like, we did two 14-hour-ish days. So it was like I'd never worked that long in my entire life during it,
Right.
for a day. So that was kind of crazy. And then come to find out the more I'd actually start to work like actual gigs, like 10 to 12-hour days are pretty normal. So that was kind of, I was like, wow, it's different, but it's the same no matter where you
Right.
go. So.
You and I have a pretty similar background. I have friends who do voice acting, and I've done voice acting as well. Um, And then
Oh,
my
cool.
first film, before I got into film, I did photography for a local theater. I did for the press releases, I would do the photography for that, which then branched into starting to film. And my first project was a fan film as well. So
There
after
you
the
go.
show, I want to give you the information on the voice acting that I did because it's a troupe. They've been going for 10 years. They do something every month and they're always looking for guest stars. So I think that would be great if you were able to either come to Ohio where we are or zoom in and be a part of it. That'd be a lot of fun.
That'd be, yeah, that'd be really cool. I'd love that.
Okay. Okay, sure. So did you go to film school?
No, I actually haven't been to college at all. But I pretty much self-taught and all that stuff. But it's interesting you bring that up because uh, I was a part of a Discord community. It's called Movies and Filmmaking. It's the largest movies Discord there is, and that actually is true. Um, but they had like a filmmaking section, so it's called Movies and Filmmaking, and the filmmaking section's like really really small compared to like all the movies and television stuff that all the different Discord channels they have.
Mhm.
Um, and like that was such a common question is like, should I go to film school or shouldn't I go to film school? And like it was so interesting to hear different people's perspectives on like, people would say that they learned a lot in film school, but nothing they couldn't learn outside of film school. But they
Right.
made connections and they had lifelong friends from having been in film school that like as they went along into the industry paid off dividends big time.
Right.
So I didn't go to film school. I kind of wish I did.
I'm in the same boat as you. I didn't go to film school either, but the people that I've met who did go, they said pretty much the same thing, that when they truly learned about film, it was all through trial and error and actually gaining that experience. But the connections that they made through school really helped them progress in their career. What drew you to the horror genre?
Um, I've always had a weird relationship with horror movies, and like weird is in like I grew up with like my mom watching a lot of horror movies.
Mhm.
So like I wasn't supposed to be watching them, but she would think I had fallen asleep or whatever, like on the couch or something. And her and my dad would just like I remember watching like through the covers, like pretending I'm asleep watching Face Off, which isn't a
Okay.
horror movie, but like when you're like 6, 7 years old, it's kind of like a horror movie, especially
It
with
is pretty
the face
scary.
transplant thing. Yeah. And Nicolas Cage doing the Nicolas Cage thing. Um, and then going to Sunday school and then telling people about it at show and tell, and I'm like, okay, that's enough about that. Because again, it's like it's a pretty crazy movie to talk about, but
Right.
like my mom always loved watching horror movies, like the more like slow burn kind of drama oriented like horror movies. And
Mhm.
then my older, I have four siblings, so my two older brothers, one of them huge movie nerd. Like I remember he would whenever we moved, he had to like bring like boxes and boxes and like those milk crates filled to the brim, like basically a truck bed filled with these milk crates and boxes
Mhm.
of VHS tapes. So like growing up, I had like an entire like, nowadays it doesn't really compare to like what we have access to, but when you're in, early 2000s, like you basically have the Library of Alexandria of movies and
Right.
like half of them are horror films. Um, and like my older brother would be babysitting me. I'm like 6, 7 years old, 8 years old, watching Poltergeist
Mhm.
and having nightmares and like daymares because of the movie Poltergeist.
Right.
Um, so that when I say I have a weird relationship with it, like I grew up hating horror movies because like it was always too scary for me growing up, but
Mhm.
like repeated exposure kind of feels like Stockholm syndrome because now I feel drawn to watching horror movies, and like the idea of making horror films is like way different than the desire to watch one.
Mhm.
Because now that I'd made a few and I'd been a part of a few sets making them, making a horror film is so different than making any other kind of film. And I think that's why I like making horror films. It feels there's like an ingrained comedic level to like everyone there is having a blast making a
Yeah.
horror film. When you're making a drama film, you have to like put on serious face,
Mhm.
make sure that everyone on set is uh like locked in to like this is a serious thing. Like the actors need to be in their space, cut down the side talk and everything. A horror
Right.
movie or like making jokes, people have like the mask on, they're kind of like playing with the blood, and it's hilarious. It's a good time.
It is. It is.
So,
I'm glad you brought that up. I've only worked on horror movies, so I appreciate what you're saying, how making a drama or a comedy, like people are real serious. And they're always in that seriousness. But while making a horror movie, you during the downtime, you are able to goof around, and then you get excited, like, oh, the next scene is my death scene, and you're covered in blood, and it's just a very fun day.
yeah.
So when did your passion for horror turn into you wanting to do it professionally?
I guess for me, my desire for storytelling kind of was born out of like growing up in the 2010s, or sorry, the 2000s.
Mhm.
Like when I was in high school during like my most formative years, I was watching a lot of I was like watching through all like the movies that my brother had.
Mhm.
Um and then like that was when streaming was starting to kind of become a thing through like, the cable channels like having like on demand movies and stuff. And then like stuff like Showtime, HBO, all that. And then like anime was a huge influence on like what I was consuming outside of, the media that I was like participating in. Like
Mhm.
I really like that's kind of like why I wanted to get into voice acting was because of anime. And before even watching anime, like I was always parroting stuff. I was always parroting like lines from a movie. Like,
Mhm.
I have ADHD, so like it's kind of like an auditory stim of just like repeating movie lines that are really funny to me.
Yeah.
Um, be it stuff from like Scary Movie or like Austin Powers or, pick a Jim Carrey movie basically. Like, um, so like that desire kind of, I don't know, kind of stuck in the back of my head of like, I want to do that. I want to make people laugh. I want to make people feel things.
Mhm.
Um, and that's kind of how that started.
Yeah. You and I will have a great time if we ever hang out because I love Scary Movie. I love Austin Powers. I quote that all the time. And then I quote Dumb and Dumber on a daily basis. So any Jim Carrey movie, I'm right there. So let's get into your involvement with Fear Pigs. You were the director of a Fear Pigs original Dollar Store Killers.
Yep.
Can you tell us more about the plot to Dollar Store Killers?
Yeah, so the plot of Dollar Store Killers, it follows a YouTuber documentarian, like a former news anchor turned YouTube documentarian, YouTube journalist. Um, and he's following these two people, they call themselves the Dollar Store Killers, on social media, and they're posting their uh their kills, their videos of their kills. Um on social media. And people aren't really sure if it's fake or real, whatever the case may be. But he starts to like kind of get a little curious, like why would someone, this is kind of bombastic, why would someone do that? And he
Mhm.
finds out that they're, they're for real, they're serious.
Okay.
And then he finds out their reason for the kills, it has to do with their victims are specifically victims that are responsible for allowing the water supply in Pauley, Wisconsin to become poisoned and causing all of the tenants of Pauley, Wisconsin to have some form of kidney cancer.
So walk us through how you were able to direct Dollar Store Killers.
So the writer, Angus Hurwitz, I think I always get his last name completely wrong pronouncing that. Um, Me and him, we kind of go back a little ways. Actually, that community I was talking about, the Discord community, movies and filmmaking, that's how we met. We met on that server. And I was actually one of the people running the like screenwriting events that we would have. So we would do like a writing prompt, like a monthly writing prompt.
Mhm.
Um, and we kind of hold it in um, all sorts of different ways. But basically, he would participate, and Angus is, he's kind of like the wiser uncle that you never had, who just has gobs and gobs of advice when it comes to not just writing films, but also like making them and like how to deal with people. And
Mhm.
me and Angus became fast friends through that server. And, Angus lives all the way in North Carolina, roundabouts. I live in Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And, we had tried to make a project before that didn't kind of really turn out, but he really liked the way I hold myself. He really liked, the output of other projects I've done. And
Mhm.
he got a hold of a friend of his who he had come up with through the 2000s making films. And his friend, Eric Tomasunis, who's the owner of Fear Picks, um, got a hold of Angus and said, "Hey, I want to make a movie. What ideas do you have?" And Angus had this idea kind of racking around his brain, and he said, "I got Dollar Store Killers. Here's the premise." Eric says, "I love it. Let's make it happen." And next thing I know, Angus is knocking on my Discord DM saying, "Hey, you want to direct a movie, a feature film, and get paid to do it? Or like, here's some money to do it."
Yeah.
I'm like, sure. you know, yeah, you don't say no to that, right?
Right.
All right. So yeah, and the rest is history.
That's fantastic. So how was it funded? Was it all through Fear Picks?
Yeah, Fearpix said that this was going to be their first Fearpix original, and they wanted to basically write the check. Um, It was kind of like they basically formed it as a pre-sale. So basically, here's the money to make the movie, but we own the movie.
Mhm.
Um, but you get points on the back end. It's kind of like how that shakes out. And that's pretty typical for smaller distributors or smaller streamers. Like even if you do
Mhm.
like a deal with Tubi or something like that, that's going to be how it kind of ends up, is like a basically a pre-sale. So
Okay. The movies that I have on streaming all went through Film Hub, so I receive a very small percentage of the royalties.
yeah,
Did you submit it to any film festivals?
I didn't, and the reason I haven't yet is because a lot of the festivals I would have wanted to submit to, their uh deadlines had already passed. Also, a lot of film festivals don't really like it when you've already premiered the film, especially if you've premiered on a major streamer. So our film is on FearPix, but it's also on Amazon Prime as well as Tubi. So because of that, it's not as easy to get it through festivals. So it's kind of like the drawback when you do a pre-sale, you don't get to do as many festival runs as maybe you'd like to. That doesn't mean we're not going to.
If you are able to submit it to a festival, I highly recommend that you do. I watched it twice. I loved it so much. And we'll get into that later.
Thank you.
Um, how
Go
was it
ahead.
working with the actors?
The actors were fantastic. Actually, a thing I've run into making movies, I've directed about seven short films before. This was my first feature film. But something I had learned through directing those, as well as I've been the director of photography for one feature and several other shorts. I've been involved in some capacity in a few other shorts. Um, I think of in total probably around about like 25-ish, 26-ish movies in total.
Oh.
Um, and something I've noticed is there's a lot of hurry up and wait when it comes to making short films on a budget. Like it's a lot of like, we got to make this now. And then you start to make it. And then like you have all this time that you didn't prepare yourself to have or to do anything with. And something I would notice is a lot of the times what makes or breaks a good short film, besides the audio, which I know a lot of people like to talk about and hammer on the audio. The audio is important. The other big thing, um, I mean, even take the script and put that to the side for a minute. Time with the actors, like a good solid amount of time with the actors and having them have time with the text. And then for them to have questions with it, for them to actually have buy-in to what you're making, right? Like, um, Sidney Lumet is a really good filmmaker. He has a book called On Filmmaking, I think it's called. And the best quote he has in that film, in that book that he repeats several times, is like, the best time I ever had making a movie was when we were all making the same movie. And that phrase kind of like sticks with me. It's stuck with me since. And when I got the opportunity to make a feature, I'm like, I need to make sure I have as much time with the actors as I possibly can, because that's always been something I've skimped on. It's been something my peers have skimped on. And, no disrespect to anybody. I think making short films is already really, really hard, especially if you're on your own budget. But, this time we've got money. And this time, I can pay people, I can pay actors, I can pay the crew. Like we can take some time to like actually do a couple of table reads, maybe even do some rehearsals. I'll get into why that didn't actually happen, but the way I wanted it to. But I still got as much time as I could with the actors and made sure that they had any questions they had, uh, responded to and to a satisfactory level where they felt comfortable embodying the characters, but as close as they could. That already said, I've already worked with two of the actors previously, both Amelia Marie and um, Seth Seth K. Hale. I'd worked with them previously on several other projects, both. So I already kind of had some rapport built with them. But I held the auditions honestly, and they both knocked it out of the park, and I just kind of felt gravitated towards them, and they're amazing actors. All of the cast is amazing. So
I really enjoyed watching what they did with each of their characters. So I agree they were amazing in Dollar Store Killers. So with the production schedule, how long did it take you to film? How many days and what were the hours like?
yeah, so everyone says that, well, once you get money to make a film, it makes it so easy because you can just pay money to like do things. And it's like, for some stuff, yeah, sure. But I think what a lot of people don't know about making films when you have money all of a sudden, especially if you're now paying everybody, um, is that your money doesn't go nearly as far as you think it does. And while you might think, oh, well, if I had money, I could easily do like a 14 or 15-day shoot. We did a 7-day shoot on Dollar Store Killers,
Okay.
one of which was a day I did not anticipate. So, that being said, the only reason I scheduled it for technically 6 days, ended up being 7, um, was because it was intended to be or not mockumentary, a found footage horror film. And I knew, having done found like a mockumentary style, which is kind of, they're both found footage technically, if you want to get into the nitty gritty of it. Um, I knew that the time for setups in terms of like lighting setups and camera setups is not nearly as much. You can get a lot more done because basically a lot of the stuff is just kind of, to throw the phrase around, cinema verite. Like you just go with it. You just kind of,
Sure.
you're in the car now. Um, so basically we ended up with 7 days total. Each day we didn't really go past 10-ish hours. Some days are actually under. Um,
Mhm.
but I would say the days that we spent the most time on is around about 10 to 12 hours when we were at the cave slash campground that we
Okay.
shot in.
I was very impressed with that cave scene and just that overall you were able to gain access to it. So, whoever you had to kiss ass to in order to get that, job well done because it looks great.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, as the director of Dollar Store Killers, what did you try to bring to the overall tone of the movie?
I think something I really like about Angus's writing, again, I've mentioned, we kind of go back a little bit. I've read a few of his scripts. And something I always appreciate about Angus's scripts is that he always kind of finds a way to like touch on a really important issue of some kind in a way that you don't exactly expect. Really, something really, really grounded, and he just kind of touches on something very, very real. And like it's kind of like one of those topics that you want to avoid at like maybe the dinner table, but then he just kind of like, he touches that button.
Right.
Um, and it's with a lot of nuance and a lot of it feels very gray. It feels like you can't really exactly put your finger on what the right answer here is. And it's like, I want to make sure that I honor that because, it's something I've always respected with his writing that I've always wished I could bring to my writing. I tend to be a little more fantastical with my writing, or a little more metaphorical.
Okay.
But his is just a lot more, it's so much more grounded. And I want to make sure I was honoring that as much as I could, because the subject matter of Dollar Store Killers is kind of like, is a weird time that we started making that film last year, and then later in the year something like what happens in the movie actually happened in front of our very eyes on social media, which is crazy. And then that's like,
Yeah.
it's emblematic of the times we are currently living in. And it's like, I couldn't have foreseen that, but the fact that it did happen while I was editing the film, I'm just like,
Mhm.
it added that much more fuel to the fire of making sure that it was as good as I could make it.
So while I was watching it, I picked up on a political undertone throughout the movie, basically that it's profit over people. Was that intentional?
Yeah, that was the beating heart of Amelia's character, um Dixie. Dixie has this like, you know, she kind of has this Southern Belle accent kind of going on. It's like that Southern like rebel fire thing she's got going on, and it's like
Mhm.
that's and Ethan, Seth's character has to kind of contend with that. Of like, he's very much the audience surrogate of,
Mhm.
they're right. I don't know what to say about that. That's kind of complicated, and uh wow. what do you even say in the face of that? And that's exactly, I feel like most people when they've watched it, they've kind of given me the same feedback of like this made me very uncomfortable and like in my morals in a way. I'm like, good. That's exactly the point. Is like, stuff like this actually happens, and not necessarily, in a made up town, but like it's based. First off, the story is actually based on a real thing that happened in North Carolina, and then also you could kind of bring up examples that are basically reflected in a different way. But similarly, if you look at like Flint, Michigan, for a
Mhm.
great example,
Yeah.
there's all sorts of things like this where there's profit over people, and that was the beating heart of the film for sure.
Did you have any other roles in the movie or any other duties that you did?
So I primarily produced the film with the help of Angus as well as my director photographer, Xavier Shatska, who also stars in the film,
Mhm.
as well as I want to shout out my good friend Eric Lukert, who served as the locations manager, as well as the uh, our safety guy, as well as basically set dad, more or less, along with uh, his fiance, who also was starred in the film. So like it very much was all it felt very much all hands on deck in terms of that. But
Right.
so I produced it. I also starred in the first death scene or the second death scene, the one with the wine corkscrew.
Hmm.
Um, and then I also ended up having to edit the film. I colored the film, and um, I think that's about it.
Oh, that's all.
Yeah. It's just that, just all that stuff. Um, when it comes to this kind of thing, that's pretty much the name of the game, especially when it's a budget feature film. You're gonna wear multiple hats. It's not any different than a budget short film.
Tell me more about the mask design.
The mask design is actually a really funny story. So, Angus had sent me these masks that he bought in 2005 from a dollar store, um, to use for the film. And it's like a box filled with like 20 of these masks. So like we could just go through them, right?
Mhm.
Well, on our way to the caves, I packed everything I possibly could. I had all the crafty and I was packing some of the stuff from our director of photography. We were taking two separate cars, and meeting the cast and crew at the campsite. And I was like, where did I forget anything? I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I don't know what I'm forgetting. I
Mhm.
looked at my checklist, checked it twice, uh, you know, and I'm driving and all this, like I'm 3 hours into the drive and I'm like, oh no, I forgot the masks. Um, so what ended up happening is Eric Lukert and his fiancee Veronica um were my saviors and went hunting for a place to buy some masks, and they bought like these like hockey like uh Jason looking masks, right?
Mhm.
The hockey mask things. And he brings them back and I'm like, okay, I need glue because this is just too much like, it's just going to look like a ripoff of Jason. We got to do something with this.
Yeah.
And Frankie, who plays Dax and Amelia, and then also our first AD, Amini. They're all really close friends. They've worked on a lot of stuff together. They kind of came up through college together. They just start going to town on these masks and like the wood sticks and leaves and stuff. That's all them.
Mhm.
They did that themselves. They've completely made that of their own volition. They're like, "Hey Zach, we had some ideas for the mask. What do you think?" And I'm like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
this really is an all hands on deck kind of thing." And it just kind
Mhm.
of it worked so perfectly, and it matches like because it's of the forest, like them being in the forest in that first scene when you see them. It's like it just clicked. It's perfect. Couldn't ask for a better couldn't ask for a better cast and crew.
Was there any particular scene that was emotionally difficult to direct?
I think probably the bit where it's a scene that's just before the climax scene. Um it's the scene where Ethan is addressing the character directly, but he's not even really direct. He's not even addressing the camera. It kind of comes off like one of those office moments where he's looking at the camera, but he's not even looking at the camera. He's looking at the, his sidekick, the cameraman, right?
Mhm.
Um, who again is played by the director of photography. And he's like basically saying like, we can't do this. Like we can't, and, uh, the first time we shot that, we actually ended up having to reshoot it in a different setting. But the first time we shot it, it was like lightning in a bottle. And um, I mean, Seth is just a powerhouse of an actor. He nailed it. And like he and I were both kind of like tearing up, like after the after the scene was wrapped. And I'm like, well, we're never getting that again. And like it's so out of context, like it doesn't really have anything to do with me or anything I've
Mhm.
struggled with personally directly, but like just, he's just a really good actor and it's a really well written scene. So I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
that was probably the hardest.
At any point, did imposter syndrome or doubt kick in?
Oh yeah, every turn.
Right.
Every single turn. Um, the at first when it was like ramping up, I'm just kind of like, okay, this is cool, this is happening. Like, it's like a turning point for most people, I think, when they get to direct their first feature, however they come across it.
Mhm.
Um, it's like it's a milestone. It's a serious milestone. And for some people, during a different economical climate, it might mean something more for someone's career in the immediate. So I thought it was a huge deal. And I'm like,
Mhm.
this is great. This is gonna be awesome. And then the money hits my account. And can I swear on this?
Yes, yes, you can.
I shit a brick to be exact. Because it's a lot of money to me. It's not a lot of money to make a film with, but it's a lot of money to me. And all of a sudden, I'm responsible for all of it. And you know, bringing on these people for several days at a time, making sure they have food, making sure they have water, making sure they have somewhere to sleep, and making sure they have somewhere to shower, that they're
Mhm.
comfortable. During the after we got back from the campsite, we were there for 4 days, and I was already sick. Actually contracted RSV while we were there, and I
Wow.
was sick as a dog. So while that was happening, I was feeling like, wow, I don't even know if this is going to be any good. I don't even know what's happening right now. What scene are we on? I don't know. I'm like
Mhm.
directing completely by reflex some of the scenes, and everyone can tell that I'm just kind of muscling through it. And then when we get back, basically we had to stop shooting because everyone got sick.
Mhm.
Like 6 out of the 11 cast and crew were sick with RSV or something. I think
Yeah.
somebody tested positive for COVID, but I tested negative. Most people tested negative, but one person tested
Mhm.
positive for COVID. I think it was RSV. Not really sure, but that hit us, and I just kind of felt like, oh no, are we going to be able to make this film still? Like, what's going to happen? I was
Right.
feeling like, the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up on almost permanently because then I'm like, well, we have a deadline. Like,
Mhm.
we can't just sit on this for months at a time. We have to do this as soon as we can. So like, um, but thankfully everyone who was a part of it wasn't just in it for like the modicum of money, the small bucks I was able to pay them. They were in it
Mhm.
because they love movies. They love making movies. So like, yeah, there's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of doubt, even like, especially during the editing process. My God, every time I'm having to look my creation, our creation, in the face and like, you know, face the regret of all the choices I made or didn't make, and
Mhm.
oh man, we really should have reshot this. Maybe we could still reshoot it. You know, this, that, and the
Mhm.
other. And it's just like it's too late. And like I'll say this: every other short film anyone's ever made, sometimes you can just give up and like put it underneath the bed and never like look at it because it's really bad or like you feel like it's really bad. But and it's probably a bad thing to do. I don't recommend doing that. But like everyone's done it at some point, even if it was their first one, whatever. I can't do that with this. It's bought and paid for. It's not my movie. I have to finish it. Tough, you know?
Yeah.
So, yes, to answer your question, I resound in yes constantly.
So at what point, whether it was during filming or editing, did you realize like, okay, we really have something here?
It was the first night after filming that I got all our footage backed up, and um so I do film coloring on the side professionally. So like my first thing was like I want to know what this looks like when you colored it, because to me, like, you can get it into the edit and the edit feels good and the audio feels good. But for me, like seeing it colored is like my favorite part, because that's when it
Mm.
starts to gel. That's when it kind of starts to meld into itself along with the audio. And um, the first thing I did was I got it into DaVinci Resolve and I started coloring it. And I'm like, dude, I'm like showing uh, our director of photography, who's also one of my best friends. Um, getting to make a movie with my best friend's really awesome, and he trusted me to like color it. Um, and we're both like, dude, like
Mhm.
we're making a fucking movie, you know?
Yeah.
So first day, absolutely the first day.
What did you learn from this experience?
Oh God, what didn't I learn? I I'll try to be as succinct as possible. I learned it reinforced my desire to make sure that casting really good actors, and good actors is something I want to qualify, but to be really, really short, people you trust, casting and hiring people you really, really trust, that um, you know who will be there when shit hits the fan, because that it will eventually at some point in the process, shit will hit the fan. It's meant to. It's a man-made thing.
You mentioned the actors um and those characters. So the lead characters, Dax and Dixie, they kind of have their own idiosyncrasies throughout the movie. Dax didn't like anyone to swear. You don't want to say language whenever someone would swear. And then what I loved about Dixie, and I kind of want to know if this was done on purpose, her whole revenge is about going after the people who have poisoned the water. And she's vaping throughout the entire film.
So, yeah, both of those things were the vaping thing was only touched on in the script like once or twice. It was
Mhm.
more of like a punctuation for like a particular sentence that Dixie had said um, when she was kind of like trying to make a sting at Ethan, and not really at Ethan, but like through Ethan, right?
Mhm.
She's not really, none of her anger is at Ethan. Her anger is to be translated by Ethan, hopefully appropriately. Ethan as cameraman. So like she punctuates with the vape, and um the actor Amelia, she glommed onto that because she kind of, like, we talked about the character at length, multiple phone calls, trying to dial in on who Dixie really is. What's her deal? What's her vibe? You
Yeah.
know, what is this chip on her shoulder? How does she talk? What are her eating habits? Like, how does she walk? How does she like, who is this person? Like,
Mhm.
really deep character work. Amelia really dug into that, and so did Frankie, and so did Seth. Amazing jobs, all of them. But the idiosyncrasies of Dixie were really kind of invented mostly by Amelia herself. And I encouraged it. I think, you know, something I've kind of learned as a director is like when an actor really wants to run with something,
Mhm.
you trust it. You just kind of let them do their thing, because, if it adds to the movie in a good way, then you let them keep doing it. If it's not adding to it, then you can talk about it. You can have a conversation about what are we trying to communicate, yada yada yada, get the idea. But
Yeah.
everything Amelia was throwing at it was working perfectly. I couldn't have figured out a different way to do it better, which is how I knew I cast the right person. And then for Dax, It actually was kind of a sticking point because whenever we'd see language in the script, we were all scratching our heads at like, but why? And after a few conversations with Angus and him kind of explaining like, who Dax really is and what is driving his behavior, like why he's doing any of this is because he's kind of glommed on to Dixie as like he's protecting her, but he needs to protect her. So it's really her protecting him. Like, and you see that dynamic kind of play out through the movie. It's like he's got to be the tough bad boy, but he's a gentle giant really
Yeah.
underneath it all.
Yeah.
So like when he's kind of doing the language thing, it's like a tick of like there's something psychologically not quite explained, but something's kind of broken. They're both broken from what's happened to them.
I appreciate that you mentioned how the characters are they have this protection for one another. Because when I was first watching Dollar Store Killers, I was like, okay, this is a revenge based film. But the more I watched it and paid attention to the characters, it feels like it was more about them preserving their own safety for their town.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, it is vengeance because it's let on pretty early in the film. Dixie's mom passes,
Yeah.
um, and it comes off very obviously this is revenge. But the more she talks about the why with Ethan, because Ethan starts prodding, and Ethan really wants to kind of know.
Mhm.
Um, I just made a pun, and I didn't even realize it. That his YouTube thing is Ethan wants to know, or the people want to know. Um, she gets into the actual reason why it's not just because of her mom. It's because of all the other people who have moms, just like
Mhm.
Dixie does, who have people they've lost, who are going to lose people that they love, and how people at the top just keep getting away with it. They
Mhm.
just keep getting away with it and make money off of it on top of it.
Is there anything about Dollar Store Killers that you want to talk about that you haven't been able to? Like after filming when you're driving home and you thought, "Oh, I can't wait for my first interview so I could talk about this." And then that question never came up.
I think something I really wanted to drive home about Dollar Store Killers is that um, it is simultaneously a horror film, a suspense thriller, a revenge-driven, you know, uh, slasher kind of thing. Um, it's all of those things. It's also none of those things. It is at its heart. It's a drama film. It's about the relationship between, um, you know, the people of a town and a corporation that doesn't care about, the the parasite doesn't care about the thing it's leeching off of. It just wants to leech. And at the heart of Dollar Store Killers, like if it isn't patently obvious, it is a political film through and through. No two ways around it. Um, it would be dishonest to characterize it any other way.
Mhm. Where do you think you would be if you never made horror movies?
I can't even imagine. I don't know. Really upset or really sad, really
Mhm.
depressed. Not in a good spot. Not where I am now.
What advice do you have for aspiring horror directors and writers?
Um, I actually have two pieces of advice, if that's cool.
Yeah.
Um, this is something I have thought about. Um, I think piece of advice number one is um, be careful of falling in love with the fantasy of potential. And what that means is like when you start making something, we've all if this sounds familiar to you, then I'm talking to you. When you start making something and you want to show something show someone the progress you've made on the thing because you're so excited about how good it is. Don't do it because what you're doing is you're going to stop yourself in your tracks. You're going to you're going to sate the need to make something and to show someone, and then you're going to stop and you're not going to continue with the thing. If that resonates with you, then I'm talking to you because I've done that a lot. I know a lot of filmmakers who've done that because you fall in love with the fantasy of your potential And that literally is what it sounds like. You're falling in love with, I know I can do this thing. I know we can do this thing. And because I've proven it with this like this sample, now I don't have to continue. And you don't really say that. You just kind of let it fall to the side because, well, you've lost your motivation. You're not really sure why. Well, that's why. Don't let that happen. Um, I think the other thing I would say is go out and live life. Don't write from behind a screen. Go write in a coffee shop. Go write on a train. Take a bus somewhere. Doesn't matter where, but touch some grass and let life impact the stories you want to tell. Because if you don't live life, you have nothing to say.
Okay. What projects do you have coming up next?
I have a musical that I'm writing. It's been a long time coming. It started out as a short film that grew into a feature film that we've kind of refactored into a medieval horror fantasy metal opera that's going to be premiering in the UK sometime late next year, maybe early 2027. Sounds kind of a lot. It's a lot of words, but basically it's called A Fair Wake, and it's basically um, Halloween meets Game of Thrones kind of vibes.
I will find a way to the UK because you had me at Halloween and Game of Thrones and musical as well. So I will be there.
Yeah, yeah. It's a metal opera to be very specific, written by yours truly. So that's gonna be really fun. So there's that, and then I have a vampire short that I'm gonna be filming sometime in February called I Am God.
And then one last question before I let you go. It's kind of just a fun question. If you could be in
Sure.
any horror movie, which would it be, and what character would you play? Or would you just play yourself?
Oh man, it's like sort of a cop out. Um, I would want it to be Vampire's Kiss. And I just want to be a fly on the wall watching Nicolas Cage just like drag this bat through like downtown New York City, just like lumbering around, like looking like, a vampire or not really a vampire with the fake teeth and everything.
Well, thank you again so very much for not only being my first guest, but for coming on and just talking to me about Dollar Store Killers and your journey through filmmaking. Uh, I can honestly say that I feel like you have a very promising career moving forward. I really love what you did with the film, and I'm going to actively seek out your other short films.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a good
All
time.
right.